And there's a kind of pain that doesn't scream. It doesn't slam doors. It doesn't throw things across the room or beg to be seen. It just sits there, quiet, heavy, pressing against your chest at 2 a.m. while you stare at a phone that never lights up. And that's what makes it so cruel. Because when someone with avoidant tendencies pulls away, they don't always give you something obvious to hate. They give you almosts. Almost warmth. Almost clarity. Almost love. Enough to keep your nervous system hooked, but never enough to let it rest. So you start bargaining with silence. Should I disappear completely? Should I send one soft message? Should I stay warm so they don't forget me? Should I go cold so they feel me missing? And beneath all of those questions is the one you almost don't want to admit. What actually works on someone who runs the moment things get real? Because you've tried understanding. You've tried patience. You've tried giving space without needing too much. You've tried being the safe one, the calm one, the one who doesn't push. And still, somehow, you ended up alone with all the feelings they couldn't hold. Here is the brutal truth. If your contact is coming from anxiety, it doesn't matter whether it's no contact or soft contact. They will feel the pressure underneath it. Avoidants are not just responding to your words. They are responding to the emotional temperature behind your words. Your pauses. Your waiting. Your invisible reaching. Your hope wrapped in politeness. Your just checking in that is really, please tell me I still matter. They feel that. And when they feel that, something inside them starts tightening. Not always because they don't care, but because care, for them, often arrives tangled with overwhelm. This is where most people get it wrong. They imagine the avoidant person as cold, detached, unaffected. But many avoidants don't shut down because they feel nothing. They shut down because they feel too much and have nowhere safe inside themselves to put it. Closeness activates threat, not because love is dangerous, but because dependence feels dangerous. Need feels dangerous. Expectation feels dangerous. Emotional intensity feels like a room with no exits. So when you come closer, especially after they've already started retreating, their nervous system doesn't read it as romance. It reads it as demand. Their amygdala lights up. Stress chemistry starts moving. Cortisol rises. Their body begins preparing for escape before their conscious mind has even formed a sentence. And suddenly, the person who kissed you like they meant it is now taking 10 hours to answer a simple text. The person who once leaned in is now confused. The person who wanted you is now overwhelmed. The person who cared is now distant, vague, hard to reach. Not because the feeling was fake, because the feeling became dysregulating. That's the part no one tells you when you're crying over someone avoidant. Their withdrawal is often not the absence of emotion. It's emotional flooding wearing the mask of detachment. And if you don't understand that, you'll misread everything. You'll think, if I show more love, they'll feel safer. But if they are already overwhelmed, more love can feel like more pressure. You'll think, if I stay gently present, they won't lose the connection. But if your softness is carrying hidden urgency, they will still feel pursued. You'll think, if I disappear, they'll think I never cared. But if your presence has become associated with activation, your absence may be the first time their system has room to feel you without defending against you. That is why the real question is not no contact versus soft contact. The real question is this: does your energy create pursuit or space? Because avoidants are rarely moved by intensity when they are deactivating. They are moved by what doesn't corner them, what doesn't grip, what doesn't demand resolution before they are capable of offering it. And that brings us to the one concept that changes everything: non-reactive absence. Not punishment, not manipulation, not a performance designed to make them panic. Non-reactive absence is what happens when your silence is no longer a protest, but a boundary. When your distance is no longer a strategy, but a return to yourself. When you stop using contact to regulate your fear. That is the difference between no contact that repels and no contact that transforms the dynamic. If you vanish dramatically while secretly checking their stories, counting the hours, rehearsing their return, and hoping your silence wounds them into love, your body is still in pursuit. Even in absence, you are chasing. And somehow, they can feel it. Maybe not consciously, but relationally, energetically, nervously. The thread is still there, tight around both of you. But when something in you actually lets go, when you stop reaching into their silence to extract reassurance, when you stop curating the perfect soft text to keep the emotional door cracked open, when you stop managing their comfort at the expense of your own dignity, something changes. The pressure disappears. And for an avoidant, pressure disappearing can be the first moment they have enough internal space to feel loss. This is why soft contact often fails when the connection is already unstable. Because soft contact sounds harmless, a meme, a casual check-in, a warm little message with no visible demand. But if the bond is unresolved, that message often lands like an emotional probe. It says, "I'm still here. I still want access. I still want to know where I stand, even if I pretend I don't." And the avoidant reads the subtext. Not always as accusation, sometimes as obligation. Now they have to decide: respond or disappoint, reassure or retreat, be kind or be trapped. And because they have not built the internal capacity to remain present inside emotionally loaded connection, they often choose the path that gives them the fastest nervous system relief: distance. That's the part that breaks your heart. You send something gentle, and they get colder. You try to be understanding, and they go quieter. You reduce your needs, and somehow become even more forgettable. But you were never becoming forgettable. You were becoming too available while they were still trying not to feel. Imagine them after the conversation ends. The room goes still. Your message sits there. Maybe they read it 3 times. Maybe they put the phone face down. Maybe they tell themselves they'll answer later when they have more energy. But that later keeps moving. Because every time they think about replying, they don't just feel you. They feel everything attached to you. The tenderness, the uncertainty, the possibility of needing to explain themselves, the risk of being pulled back into a level of closeness they don't know how to sustain. So they delay. And delay becomes distance. Distance becomes guilt. Guilt becomes more avoidance. This is how the cycle feeds itself. And meanwhile, on your side, your dopamine system is starving. You're living on crumbs. A delayed text becomes a reward spike. A story view becomes a sign. A like becomes hope. Your body becomes addicted to tiny, unpredictable signals because intermittent reinforcement is one of the most powerful hooks there is. It keeps you attached not to stability, but to possibility. And possibility is intoxicating when you are afraid to lose someone. That's why you keep wondering whether one perfect, soft message might reopen their heart. But hearts do not reopen under subtle pursuit when the deeper issue is emotional overwhelm. They reopen in the absence of pressure. They reopen when the nervous system is no longer bracing. They reopen when your energy stops knocking. And yes, that means true no contact often works better on avoidance than soft contact, but only when it is real, not as a trick, not as a countdown, not as a silent ultimatum. Real no contact is not, "I'll disappear so they come back." Real no contact is, "I refuse to keep abandoning myself in order to stay emotionally available to someone who cannot meet me." That energy is different. It's clean. It's still. It doesn't beg. And, ironically, that is often the first thing an avoidant can feel without panic. Because now, there is no immediate demand to respond. No expectation pressing against their chest. No emotional current they must manage in real time. Just space. And in that space, something strange can happen. The feelings they suppressed start leaking through. Not all at once. Avoidance rarely collapses dramatically into revelation. It's quieter than that. More internal. More unnerving. They notice your absence in moments they didn't expect. When they wake up and instinctively reach for the phone. When something funny happens and there's no one to send it to. When a song comes on and the body remembers before the mind does. When they realize the emotional safety net of your availability is no longer there. That's when the missing begins. Not because you convinced them, because the stimulus is gone. And what remains is the feeling they outran. This is where the power starts to flip. Before, you were the one scanning, waiting, interpreting, wondering what their silence meant. Now, if your absence is non-reactive and self-contained, they become the one encountering uncertainty. Are you done? Are you really gone? Why does the silence feel louder now? Why do I suddenly care more now that I can't feel their emotional reach? Because desire changes when access changes. And avoidants, more than most, often feel safest wanting what is not pressing them in real time. That is why they may start circling back. A random message, a low-stakes check-in, something practical, something almost casual. Something designed to test whether the emotional intensity is gone while reopening access to your attention. And if you don't understand the pattern, this is where you lose your ground. Because the moment they reappear, all your deprivation lights up. Dopamine floods, hope rushes in. Your body mistakes contact for change. And suddenly you're over-explaining, over-receiving, over-investing in breadcrumbs that feel like proof. But attention is not intimacy. Reaching out is not readiness. Missing you is not the same as having the capacity to love you well. Let that land. An avoidant can miss you deeply and still repeat the same pattern if nothing inside them has changed. They can obsess, fantasize, revisit, compare everyone to you, and still retreat the second true closeness returns. Because longing from a distance is easier than sustained vulnerability up close. That's why the goal is never just to make them come back. The goal is to break the cycle that made you small. And this is where most people have to face themselves. Were you trying to find the method that works? Or were you trying to avoid the grief of accepting that your love was not enough to heal someone who fears being known? Because those are not the same question. One is strategy. The other is surrender. And surrender is terrifying when you've built your hope around being the exception. You wanted to be the one they didn't run from, the one they softened for, the one they chose differently for. But your worth cannot be built on whether a dysregulated person learns how to stay. That is too fragile a place to live. So yes, if the question is what works better on avoidance when they are pulling away, the answer is usually real no contact, not soft contact. Real distance, not anxious warmth. Silence without hooks. Absence without hidden chasing. Because soft contact often keeps their defenses gently activated, while true non-reactive absence gives the dynamic enough stillness for reality to surface. But there is a warning inside that truth. If you use no contact only to get them back, you may win their attention and lose yourself all over again. Because the same person who vanished can return the moment they feel your energy detach. And if you are still starving, you will call that love when it is only re-engagement. You will call it transformation when it is only renewed access. You will hand them the same version of your heart that they could not hold before, and pray that this time they've grown hands. Maybe they have, but don't assume it. Watch what happens when closeness returns. Watch whether they can tolerate emotional reality. Watch whether communication becomes clearer, not just sweeter. Watch whether consistency exists after the relief of reconnection fades. Because patterns do not break in the missing. They break in the meeting. And if they do come back, your power will not be in how deeply they missed you. Your power will be in what you no longer agree to. No more shrinking your needs so they don't run. No more overvaluing rare vulnerability while ignoring chronic inconsistency. No more translating confusion into depth. No more mistaking emotional unavailability for complexity. No more calling your hypervigilance intuition. You were not hard to love. You were hard to meet while asking for something real. There's a difference. And once you feel that difference in your bones, something inside you starts to unclench. You stop romanticizing the ache. You stop chasing chemistry that destabilizes your nervous system. You stop seeing silence as mystery and start seeing it as information. You stop asking, how do I make them feel my absence? And start asking, why was I ever taught to earn love by tolerating uncertainty? That is the real shift. Not getting your power back over them. Getting your power back over the part of you that believed your devotion could override another person's defenses. Because when your self-worth returns, the whole game changes. Now, silence does not make you collapse. Distance does not make you bargain. Mixed signals do not seduce you into proving yourself. Their confusion does not become your project. You become harder to hook because you are no longer negotiating with your own value. And that is the energy that changes everything. Not coldness, not revenge, not pretending not to care. Truth. The kind of truth that sits in your spine and says, I can love deeply without abandoning myself. I can miss you without moving toward what hurts me. I can understand your wounds without volunteering to be shaped by them. That is what avoidants feel when they feel you differently. Not just absent, gone from the old role. No longer the pursuer, no longer the emotional caretaker, no longer the person waiting in the doorway of their indecision, hoping love will finally be let inside. You leave that doorway. You step back into your own life, your own body, your own standards, your own peace. And whether they return or not, you win something far more powerful than their attention. You stop being available for half love. You stop confusing longing with destiny. You stop treating your heart like a negotiation table. And in that moment, the deepest truth reveals itself. The most powerful thing you can do with an avoidant is not to outplay their defenses. It is to become someone who no longer needs to. Because your power was never in saying the perfect thing, never in choosing the perfect texting strategy, never in mastering the exact balance of warmth and withdrawal. Your power is in becoming so rooted in your own worth that anyone who wants access to you has to meet you in clarity. Not confusion, not potential, not emotional fragments. Clarity. And if they cannot meet you there, then your silence is no longer a tactic. It is self-respect, speaking in the only language the wounded heart finally understands. Enough. Not because you stopped caring, because you started caring about yourself more. And that is where your life begins to change.